What's going on, PlayDate Community? Welcome back to another episode of your game. In this episode, we're going to be showing you how to add bullets to your game. Somebody suggested that we want different types of bullets in the game, maybe laser beams and everything like that. So we're going to start by adding a pretty simple bullet, showing you how that works. And we can expand on that in the future, once we got some more fancy stuff going on in the game. Maybe once we have something to shoot at, because we're not going to cover that here. Also, suggestions of things to shoot at. So let's jump right into it. So I've gone ahead and added in this little bullet.png. Beautiful, beautiful sprite. Leonardo da Vinci, he made it next to the Mona Lisa. He made the sprite, it's 8x8 pixels. And so I took inspiration from that and turned it into a little PNG that you guys can download for free. Just go to the resources down the thing below right there. So first of all, we're going to add this to the assets file. So I'm not going to do this for you. You guys have to type this in yourself. Bullet. So we're adding a new line. So add a comma behind ship. And we're going to do bullet equals open quotes assets slash bullet. Hopefully you're feeling like Einstein, because that was very difficult. That was a very complicated one. Then we're going to add a new sprite. All right, we're going to add a new sprite for this bullet. So go ahead and type in new file under sprites, and then do bullet.lua. And we're also going to create, we're going to add an import statement inside the sprites.lua file. So import space sprites slash bullet. Okay, now we're going to create a class. Before we do that, everybody who knows the drill, give me a GFX, everybody. Local GFX, open brackets const equals playdate.graphics class, open brackets and open quotes, bullet, and skip to the end, dot extends, and we're going to do gfx.sprite. Nope, not that. Sprite. Thanks. So right now we're creating a bullet class, and what we're going to do is we're going to define an init function for this bullet. So we're going to do function bullet, same capital B as you did with the class, colon init, open close brackets, and then here we're going to call the super init of the bullet. Now don't get this confused with Superman, this is a super bullet. Bullet.super.init, and we're going to pass in self as a first argument, and we're going to pass in the assets.bullet as the second argument, because that just passes in that image. Oh wait, this isn't the image, this is the path to the image. So let's copy that, let's cut it, and let's go above class. This is where we're going to define our dash local constants, and we're going to skip the next line, and we're going to say local image bullet equals, and we can say const actually, image bullet open brackets const. I say brackets and it's curly, straight, angled, you guys just figure it out, you'll get used to it. Const equals gfx.image.new, and then here is where you write assets.bullet. So remember, this is a path, a string, it's not an image. This right here is the image. So that's where we're going to pass in the super initializer, and that should create for us a little bullet sprite. And we're going to call end. We're going to write end for that function, and I'm pretty sure we're ready to go here. What we need to do is go to main. Let's just add in this bullet sprite at some point. And we're going to delete this right away. This is just going to be we're going to go to init, say local bullet test equals bullet with capital B, open close brackets, and then we're going to do colon move to, and say again halfway across the screen, so 200 comma 120, and then we're going to say bullet test add open close brackets, and let's run that. Let's see if it works. And we're good. We're exactly where we're supposed to be. So check it out. We have a bullet on screen. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add a function to the player that allows the player to spawn bullets. And we're going to spawn the bullet where the player is, and we're going to make it go in the direction that the player is facing. All right, so everybody ready? Let's go to the player class. Let's detect if there's a B button press. So get B button state for spawning bullet. So local is B button pressed equals playdate dot button just pressed. We're not going to do button is pressed. And we're going to do playdate dot k button B. And we're going to say if is B button pressed, then, and so here dash dash spawn bullet. So this is going to be our spawn bullet code. So first thing, yeah, so let's just create it. So local bullet equals capital B bullet open and close parentheses. So that's your bullet being created. We're going to say bullet colon move to, and we're going to sell self.x comma self.y. So that's moving it to the current position. And then we're going to say, and I'm going to do this as like a comment because we can't do it right away. We're going to say set bullet velocity. Let's test this anyways. Let's see if it works. So we got our spaceship. We can press B, and apparently no bullets are being spawned. And that's because we forgot to say bullet colon add. So make sure to add that line. And then, yes, you can see that we're spawning bullets where we go. So these look more like mines than bullets or cookies. Let's go back to the bullet file. And we're going to add two functions here. We're going to add, first of all, a bullet. So function bullet colon update. So this is going to be the function where we do update position based on velocity. So over here in the init, we're just going to create a default velocity, which is going to be self.velocity x equals 0. And then copy that, paste it, and we're going to do self.velocity y equals 0. So this is going to be our two velocity variables that we're going to use. Now, just for context, we're using self.velocity because the bullet, there's going to be a lot of different instances of this class, the bullet. So if we used locals up here, every single bullet would be reading the same variable. While here, they're each reading a separate, like their own copy of that variable. That's kind of why in some classes like the player, we can read what's at the top, and other classes, you gotta instantiate things within the class itself. So small caveat. Here, we're gonna say, so we're in the bullet colon update, and we're gonna say self colon, actually we have a function for this, move by. So that's a playdate defined function for the sprite, and we're gonna say self.velocity x comma self.velocity y. So now we're moving by the velocity every playdate tick. We're gonna add one more function in between the two, which is gonna be called function bullet colon spawn, and we're gonna say position x, so just pause x is fine, pause y, and then we're gonna say velocity x, which is gonna say vel x, and then vel y, and then and so we're gonna now say self colon move to pause x comma pause y, and then we're gonna say self.velocity x equals vel x, and then self.velocity y equals vel y. We're gonna go into spawn. We're gonna say above self colon move to, we're gonna say self colon add. So now we're spawning this bullet and we're adding it when it gets spawned, which makes sense, of course. We don't need to add it when it's initialized. We should just add it when it's spawned. Go back to the player file, and instead of this mumbo jumbo stuff, we're gonna say bullet colon spawn. So let's just do that right here. Bullet colon spawn self dot x comma self dot y. So that's position x and y. And then we're gonna say, good question, what's the velocity gonna be? Let's just do a test velocity right now. We're gonna do 5 and 5. So we'll get to the velocity afterwards. Let's run that. Start, press B, and you can see that the bullet is being fired from the position of the player, and it's going down into the corner, which is perfect, exactly what we want. So I've noticed that we handle these crank positions and crank position radians kind of badly. So I'm going to make a function that takes the crank position and turns it into x and y velocity. So we're going to create this function right here on line 21 after the player set particle sprite. We're going to say local function. So this is going to be a local function. I'm going to teach you guys how to do this. I called it get rotation components. And so here we have a rotation in radians. And then end. So it's just like a normal function where you say function get rotation components, except that we're adding local in front. And that specifies that this is not something that will be exposed to the entire game, but it'll be only usable within this file. We can look into making this more global later. But for now, we're just going to be calling it from the player class, so it's not really a problem. So we're going to copy and paste code from here. So here we've got a crank position radians coming from the crank position. All right, let's handle it like this. You've got local crank position equals playdate.get crank position. Then we're going to say local crank position radians equals math.rad, and then crank position right there. So, and then here we're setting the rotation. So set player rotation, adding a comment there. And then what we're going to do, so instead of calculating this stuff, we're going to say get rotation components and pass in crank position radians. Okay, there's one thing that we need to consider here. We've got this velocity that we're not taking into account. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass in crank position radians, and then we're going to pass in a second argument that says velocity. And so that's just going to pass in that velocity that we're calculating up here, which is either 5 or 0. And what we want from that is to get like the Vx and the Vy from that. So we're going to go back up to crank get rotation components. We've got the first argument, rotation radians, and we're going to add velocity right there. And then we're going to say return, and we're going to paste that entire chunk of code, which is return velocity times math.cos crank position radians, which we'll switch out with just rotation radians, and then velocity times math.sine rotation radians. So that's what this function is doing, and it's going to be useful for us because you'll see in a second we don't need this line anymore. So by the way, what we should be doing here is do the move by, self.move by, self::move by, should be moving it right there. Local Vx comma Vy equals get rotation components, and the next line is self::move by. So this is, we're going to change the comment, move the player according to crank rotation. All right, next part is position the particles according to crank rotation, right there, and deleting the other ones, other comments I mean. And so this get rotation components, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to clean this code up. We're going to say, so I'll start from right underneath distance from center. Let's say local x comma y equals, and then get rotation components, and then I'll do crank position radians again, and then I'll say distance from center. And so the only thing here is that we're not taking into account the self.x and the self.y. So we're going to put those components right here. Self.particle sprite colon move to, we're going to say self.x plus x, comma, self.y plus y. And we can delete those two extra lines. And so here we're setting the rotation to crank position, animation. So everything else is being handled. So now we're ready to pass in the bullet rotation / velocity. So we're going to do the same thing up here. is B button pressed. We're going to do local velocity x, comma, velocity y equals get rotation components. And then we're going to do crank position radians as usual. And then we're going to pass in something here, which is going to be the bullet speed. So let's just do 5. Or no, let's go a bit faster than that. Let's do 7.5. So, and then we pass in the vel x and the vel y instead of the 2 5s that we put at the end there. So let's go ahead and run that and see if it works. All right, I'm going to pick up Buggy and use devices controller. You can see that my crank is working real nice here. Can move around, press B, and the bullet is coming out of the player just as expected. So how awesome is that? All right, guys, I'm gonna pause right here. I will see you guys in the next one for the continuation of this episode. Bye-bye.